At some point today, you will think about death. Maybe it will be a flash, a near miss on the road, headline, someone older than you complaining about their knees. And when it comes, something will tighten in your chest, something old, something deep. You will push the thought away. But here is the question nobody asks. What if that fear was never supposed to be there at all? What if the terror you feel towards your own ending is not instinct? What if it is a story you were told so many times by so many people that your brain absorbed it like a language? Because the evidence suggests exactly that. And once you see it, the fear starts to look very different. Start with this. Your brain does not actually know what death is. Not in any direct sense. You have never experienced it. You have watched others experience it, or rather watched them stop experiencing everything, but your own mind has no template for non-existence. Researchers call this the simulation problem. Your brain runs constant predictive models of the future. It imagines tomorrow morning. It imagines next year. But when you ask it to simulate a future without you in it, the system stalls. It cannot render the scene. You always appear in your own mental movies. Psychologist Arnaud Dohin at the University of Bar Ilan in Israel explored this directly. His team found that the brain treats death almost like it treats the deaths of strangers, as something that happens to others, not to the self.
The mind has a peculiar refusal mechanism. It will acknowledge death intellectually, but it will not place you specifically inside that fact. This is not denial. This is architecture. The structure of the thinking mind makes your own non-existence almost literally unimaginable. So where does the fear come from? It comes from learning, from culture, from every funeral you sat through as a child watching the adults cry, from every movie where death arrives with a score of violins and a close-up of a face twisted in grief, from religion, from ritual, from the communal way that every human society on earth has gathered around the fact of dying and said in unison, "This is the worst thing." Ernest Becker, the cultural anthropologist, spent most of his life arguing exactly this. His Pulitzer Prize-winning work laid out a theory that has spent 50 years being proven right by neuroscience and social psychology. His central claim was bold and strange and uncomfortable. He said that virtually all of human civilization, the monuments, the religions, the legacy building, the status seeking, the wars, is a response to one single unbearable awareness, the awareness that you will die, that the self you are building right now will dissolve. Becker called it the mortality salience, the knowledge that sharpens everything. He did not say this fear was natural. He said it was constructed, assembled, taught. And here's the part that should stop you cold, because scientists tested this. Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Piszczynski built a field called terror management theory. They ran hundreds of experiments over 3 decades. The basic design is simple. Remind people they are going to die. Just a few sentences, just a passing mention, and then watch what they do. The results are breathtaking in their consistency. When reminded of mortality, people become more defensive of their cultural worldview, more hostile to outsiders,
more aggressive toward anyone who thinks differently, more likely to spend money, more likely to cling to symbols of status, more likely to seek out crowd approval. Death fear does not make you retreat. It makes you lunge outward. It turns you into a creature desperately building permanence against the tide. And almost none of this happens consciously. The subjects in these studies had no idea why they were suddenly more judgmental, no idea why their hands had gripped the armrests of their own identity a little tighter. But now, ask the different question. Ask what happens to people who do not carry that fear. They exist. They are not rare, and they are not broken. Psychologist David Fessler at UCLA has studied cultures across the world with varying relationships to mortality. The differences are not small. In some traditional societies, death is framed as a transition rather than an ending. Elders speak of it openly with children, at meals, and stories, not morbidly, not obsessively, just honestly, the way you might speak about a journey. And in those communities, something remarkable happens. Terror management theory largely fails to replicate. When you remind people of death and their culture has never taught them to fear it as an annihilation, the defensive reactions do not spike the same way. They do not become more hostile to outsiders. They do not lunge for status. Their identity does not clench. The fear, it turns out, is not the death. The fear is the story about the death. Consider the philosopher Epicurus, who 2,000 years ago said the most rational thing about mortality that most people still cannot accept.
He said simply, when you are there, death is not. When death is there, you are not. There is no moment in which you and your death are in the same room. There is nothing to experience. The absence of experience cannot be experienced. By pure logic, he said, the fear is a category error. You are afraid of something that will never, by definition, happen to you. He was not unique. The Stoics trained themselves to meditate on death daily, not to become gloomy, but to do the precise opposite. They found that sitting with the fact of impermanence sharpened the present moment to an edge. The philosopher Seneca wrote that he who has learned to die has unlearned to be a slave. That line has been copied for 2,000 years because it points at something real, something most people in modern life have traded away without noticing.
It comes out as the peculiar human obsession with being right, because being wrong feels, at some level, like a small death of the self. Every argument you have ever had about something that did not matter was probably, on some level, about this. But you were not born with this fear. You were handed it. Studies of children under 4 show almost no death anxiety in its recognizable adult form. At 3, a child who hears that someone has died often asks if they will be back for dinner. Not because they are callous, because the horror has not been installed yet. The understanding of death as permanent comes around age 5 to 7. And from the research of developmental psychologist Maria Nagy, we know that this is also the precise moment when adult behavior begins to shape how the child emotionally codes that understanding. If the adults around them grieve loudly, perform terror, make the subject forbidden, the child absorbs the terror. If the adults are calm, open, matter-of-fact, the anxiety is dramatically lower. You learn to fear death from frightened people, who learned it from frightened people, who learned it from people who had no other tools. That chain can end.
None of this means death is not real. It is real. None of this means grief is not real. Grief is one of the most real things your nervous system knows how to do. But grief and the existential dread that pervades your daily life, that background hum of mortality anxiety that Solomon's research says shapes your politics, your spending, your relationships, your every move to be seen and heard and remembered, those are not the same thing. One is a natural response to losing someone you love. The other is a story you are living inside of right now, mostly without knowing it. Here is what is strange and worth sitting with. The people who think least about dying are often not the happiest. And the people who have looked directly at their mortality, who have stopped averting their eyes, often report something unexpected, not dread, not bleakness, something closer to relief, a loosening. The philosopher William James called it the second birth, the moment you stop building your life as a defense against death and start building it as a response to life. At some point today, you will think about death. Maybe it will be a flash, and when it comes, something will tighten in your chest. But now you know that tightening is not instinct. It is not nature. It is something you were taught. And anything you were taught, with enough patience and enough honesty, you can begin to learn differently.